You're not autistic. You're just exhausted from pretending to fit in. That sentence alone might shock some people. But stay with me, because what I'm about to say isn't meant to dismiss anyone. It's to show you something deeper, something that might explain why so many people today feel autistic without actually being on the spectrum. Lately, it seems like every other person online says, "I think I might be autistic." They see a video listing traits, social anxiety, overstimulation, emotional detachment, feeling like an outsider, and suddenly, it clicks. Finally, a label that explains everything. But here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud. Not every feeling of alienation means you have autism. Sometimes, it just means you've been hurt by a world that doesn't slow down for sensitive people. And that's where confusion starts. Because what looks like a symptom might actually be a defense mechanism, the body's way of saying I've had enough. Today, I'm going to show you what's really going on. Why so many intelligent, introspective people start to believe they're on the spectrum. And why, if you relate to this, it's crucial that you don't self-diagnose, but seek a real professional evaluation. Because by the end of this video, you'll understand the full picture, the emotional trap that makes people misread their own pain, and how to finally see yourself clearly again. It usually starts innocently. You're scrolling through social media, tired after another day of pretending to be normal, and then you see a video. 10 signs you might be autistic. You watch it, and one by one, every point hits home. You avoid crowds? Check. You feel drained after social interactions? Check. You've always felt different? Check. For a moment, it feels like someone finally understands you. It's comforting, almost healing. But that comfort is a trap, because the internet doesn't care about accuracy, it cares about attention. And the algorithm has learned something powerful. If it can label your pain, it can keep you watching. That's how it happens. You don't wake up one day thinking you're autistic. You get slowly trained to believe it. Video after video, story after story, you start collecting pieces of a puzzle that might not even belong to you. But here's the uncomfortable truth. What most people describe as autistic traits can also be symptoms of anxiety, trauma, social fatigue, introversion, or even simple human overwhelm. And yet, instead of exploring those possibilities, the internet gives you an easy identity. You're autistic. That's why you don't fit in. End of story. Only it's not the end of the story. Because the more you embrace that label without confirmation, the smaller your world becomes. You start seeing yourself as broken, instead of someone adapting to a broken environment. But what comes next is even more dangerous. Because once you believe you've found the answer, you stop looking for the real cause. And that's where most people get stuck. Here's where it gets tricky, and where most people go wrong. When someone feels misunderstood for too long, the mind starts building explanations to survive. You tell yourself, there must be a reason I'm like this. And when you find a label that fits, even partially, it feels like relief. But relief is not the same as truth. Many of the people who think they might be autistic aren't faking or lying. They're just hurting. They've lived years masking their personality to be accepted, in school, at work, even at home. They've been told, directly or indirectly, that they're too quiet, too intense, or too sensitive. So when they finally see videos describing autism in calm, empathetic tones, it feels like home. But here's what almost no one online explains. Emotional wounds can look like neurological traits. Chronic rejection can make you withdraw socially. Overstimulation can come from anxiety or trauma, not necessarily neurodivergence. Avoiding eye contact? That's also a learned response from years of judgment and self-consciousness. And yet, it's easier to think, I was born this way, than to confront the pain of what life did to you. That's not weakness. It's the brain's way of making suffering feel predictable, something you can understand. But when you skip the professional diagnosis, you rob yourself of clarity. You stay trapped in a story that might not be yours. So if this feels uncomfortably familiar, if you've ever thought, maybe I'm autistic, that thought deserves compassion, not ridicule. But it also deserves verification. Because what comes next is even more important. The part nobody wants to admit. Sometimes, you're not neurodivergent. You're just deeply human in a world that doesn't allow it. Once a label starts to feel like safety, it becomes part of your identity. You don't say, I think I might be on the spectrum. You start saying, I am autistic. And that's a huge shift, because now, the label isn't a hypothesis. It's a shield. That shield protects you from judgment, from blame, from the unbearable pressure to just be normal. It explains why you struggle, why you pull away, why you feel invisible. It gives you a reason, and for many, that reason becomes a kind of comfort blanket. But comfort can quietly turn into a cage. The more you build your self-image around a diagnosis you never confirmed, the more fragile that image becomes. You start filtering your life through it. This is why I can't socialize. This is why I'm exhausted. This is why I don't connect. And soon, you're no longer seeing possibilities, you're seeing limitations. Now, don't get me wrong, real autism is real pain and deserves full respect. But self-diagnosis without guidance can turn your confusion into a fixed identity. And once that happens, even healing starts to feel like betrayal, because it threatens the story you built to survive. That's why professional help matters. A good psychologist or psychiatrist won't just confirm something, they'll differentiate. They'll help you see whether what you're experiencing comes from trauma, anxiety, burnout, or neurodivergence. And that difference changes everything. Because without that clarity, you might be fighting the wrong enemy. And there's nothing more painful than spending years fixing a version of yourself that never existed. But here's the part almost no one expects. The twist that flips this whole conversation on its head. Here's the truth no algorithm wants to admit. Most people who believe they're autistic aren't broken, they're burned out. They're overstimulated, underheard, and emotionally starved by a world that moves faster than the human nervous system can process. We've built a culture that rewards loudness, confidence, and constant exposure. So when someone quiet, reflective, or introverted shows up, they start believing something is wrong with them. But feeling drained by people doesn't make you autistic. Feeling overwhelmed by life doesn't mean your brain is wired wrong. It means you're tired of pretending. And maybe that's the real diagnosis of our time, not autism, but chronic misalignment. People trying to live lives that don't match who they are, surrounded by noise that never stops. It's no wonder so many minds start looking for an explanation. So if you've ever thought, maybe I'm autistic, here's what you need to do. Don't hate yourself for wondering. That's empathy trying to understand itself. But don't stop there. Talk to a professional. Not an influencer, not a random quiz, not a 30-second clip. A real clinician who can listen, test, and guide you toward understanding, not labeling. Because here's the paradox. Once you stop obsessing over what you are, you finally start to discover who you are. And that's something no algorithm can diagnose. If this made you think, if it gave you even one moment of clarity, stay here. Subscribe, because this channel isn't about labels. It's about learning to be human again in a world that forgot how. The problem was never that you were different. The problem was believing you had to prove you weren't.